Today, the world bids farewell to a true legend. George Foreman, the two-time heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, and global icon, has fought his final round. At 76, the man who once shook the world with his fists and warmed our hearts with his smile leaves behind an unmatched legacy. But Foreman's story wasn't just about boxing, it was about resilience, redemption, and the power of reinvention. Born in the rough streets of Houston's Fifth Ward, young George Foreman wasn't destined for greatness, he fought for it. A troubled teen, he found purpose in the Job Corps, where boxing became his salvation. And by 19, he wasn't just another fighter, he was an Olympian. In 1968, with the American flag draped over his shoulders, Foreman struck gold, announcing himself to the world with an undeniable message. A champion had arrived. Feared, ruthless, unstoppable. Foreman wasn't just a champion, he was a force of nature. In 1973, he dismantled the seemingly invincible Joe Frazier, knocking him down 6 times in 2 brutal rounds to become heavyweight champion of the world. Fans and fighters alike believed no man could stand against Big George. But legends are built on triumph and tragedy. In 1974, in one of the most famous fights in history, the Rumble in the Jungle, Foreman faced Muhammad Ali. He was bigger, he was stronger. But Ali was smarter. Using the now legendary rope-a-dope strategy, Ali let Foreman punch himself out. And in the 8th round, the unthinkable happened. Foreman, the monster, was defeated. It wasn't just a loss, it shattered him. Disillusioned, Foreman faded from the sport until one fateful night changed everything. After a near-death experience in 1977, George Foreman found something even greater than boxing faith. He walked away from the ring and became a preacher, dedicating his life to helping others. For a decade, the world saw him as a man of God, not a man of war. But then, he did the impossible. George Foreman was once the most feared man in boxing. A powerhouse of brute strength and relentless aggression. He captured the heavyweight championship in 1973 by dismantling the legendary Joe Frazier. At his peak, he seemed invincible. But everything changed on March 17, 1977. I was in the dressing room after my fight with Jimmy Young, exhausted, beaten. I felt something come over me, something powerful. It was like I was leaving my body, and I knew at that moment my life would never be the same. That night in Puerto Rico, Foreman had what he described as a religious awakening. He believed he had died and had been given a second chance at life, not as a fighter, but as a messenger of God. Without hesitation, he retired from boxing and committed himself fully to ministry. For 10 years, he dedicated himself to his faith, building a congregation, helping those in need, and spreading a message of hope. The world had known him as a warrior, but now they saw him as a man of peace. Yet, despite the fulfillment his new path brought him, an old challenge was calling him back. In a shocking turn of events, former heavyweight champion George Foreman has announced his return to the ring at the age of 38. Many in the boxing world are skeptical, questioning if he can recapture his former glory. The boxing world laughed. They said he was too old, too slow, too far removed from the sport. But George Foreman was never one to back down from a challenge. His comeback wasn't about proving the doubters wrong, it was about something bigger. He had a mission. Foreman's return wasn't just about boxing. It was about raising money to support his church and his youth center. He had no endorsements, no major financial backing. He relied on sheer willpower and belief in his cause, and so he fought, and he won, again and again. At 38 years old, long past what most consider the peak for a fighter, Foreman laced up his gloves and stepped into the ring once more. It had been 10 years since he last fought professionally. The once terrifying knockout artist had softened in the public's eye. His chiseled physique had been replaced by a bulkier frame. To some, he looked more like a preacher than a prizefighter. But Foreman wasn't interested in appearances, he was interested in results. His first few fights were dismissed as mere spectacles, novelty events meant to entertain, but not to be taken seriously. He faced unknowns, journeymen, fighters who had little to no chance of beating him. The critics scoffed, labeling his return as a desperate attempt to relive past glories. But Foreman was patient. He understood that credibility wasn't earned overnight. With each fight, he sharpened his skills, refined his timing, and regained the power that had once made him one of the most feared heavyweights in history. Then, in 1991, Foreman shocked the boxing world. He challenged Evander Holyfield for the heavyweight title. Holyfield was in his prime, a relentless warrior known for his endurance, skill, and toughness. Foreman, now 42, was seen as an aging relic from a bygone era. But when the bell rang, Foreman stood toe-to-toe with the younger champion, absorbing punishment and dishing out his own. He lost the fight by unanimous decision, but he won something far more valuable: respect. The world no longer saw him as a gimmick. He was a legitimate contender. Undeterred by the loss, Foreman continued his quest. He fought top contenders, proving that he still had the power and resilience to compete at the highest level. His goal remained the same: to secure a world title and use the winnings to fund his charitable endeavors. Every punch he threw, every round he survived, was another step toward that mission. Then, on November 5, 1994, history was made. Foreman, at 45 years old, faced Michael Moorer, the reigning heavyweight champion. Moorer was young, fast, and undefeated. He was expected to outbox Foreman with ease. For 9 rounds, he did exactly that, landing punch after punch, controlling the fight. But Foreman never wavered. He waited, he bided his time, absorbing the punishment, searching for the right moment. In the 10th round, it happened. Foreman landed a thunderous right hand, sending Moorer crashing to the canvas. The world watched in disbelief as the referee counted to 10. George Foreman, the man they had once laughed at, had done the impossible. He was the heavyweight champion of the world once again, 20 years after he had lost the title. At 45, he became the oldest man ever to win the heavyweight championship. Tears filled his eyes as he knelt in his corner, offering a silent prayer. It wasn't just about the title, it was about what it represented: perseverance, faith, purpose. His victory wasn't just for him. It was for the kids who needed hope, for the community that depended on him, for the belief that second chances were possible. Foreman's reign as champion didn't last long, but that hardly mattered. He had achieved what no one thought possible. He had come back from obscurity, defied the odds, and completed his mission. He didn't just win fights, he inspired millions. His story became a testament to determination, to the power of belief, and to the idea that no dream is ever too far out of reach. Beyond boxing, Foreman's legacy continued to grow. His name became synonymous with perseverance and success, extending far beyond the ring. He became a successful entrepreneur, famously launching the George Foreman Grill, a business venture that turned him into a household name and a multimillionaire. But even with his financial success, he never forgot his roots. He continued his work in the church, guiding young men and women, instilling in them the values that had carried him through life. Looking back, George Foreman's comeback wasn't just a sports story, it was a life story. A story of redemption, faith, and resilience. It wasn't about silencing critics. It was about proving to himself that he could still achieve greatness. And in doing so, he taught the world that no matter how many years pass, no matter how many people doubt you, and no matter how impossible the odds may seem, you always have the power to rise again. Despite his age and his critics, Foreman kept winning. He wasn't the same fighter he once was. He no longer relied on brute force alone. He had evolved strategic, patient, and most of all, fearless. At 45 years old, George Foreman is set to fight the undefeated heavyweight champion Michael Moorer. No one gives him a chance. Can he truly turn back time? Moorer was young, strong, and confident. Foreman was old, seemingly outmatched. But what the world didn't see was the fire that still burned inside him, the same fire that had once made him the most feared man in the sport. For 9 rounds, Foreman absorbed punishment. He bided his time. And then in the 10th round, it happened. A single thunderous right hand changed everything. Down goes Moorer. Down goes Moorer. George Foreman has done it. He is the heavyweight champion of the world at 45 years old. It was more than just a victory, it was a testament to resilience, faith, and the power of reinvention. George Foreman had defied time, defied expectations, and proved that purpose can drive a man to accomplish the impossible. This belt, it's not just mine. It belongs to everyone who believes in second chances. If you have a dream, don't let anyone tell you it's too late. George Foreman became more than just a 2-time heavyweight champion. He became an icon of perseverance, a preacher, a mentor, a businessman, and above all, a believer in the power of faith and redemption. A fighter, a preacher, a legend. George Foreman's story is proof that no matter how many times life knocks you down, with faith and determination, you can always rise again. They laughed. They doubted. They called him crazy. But at 38, the preacher put on his gloves once again, and by 45, George Foreman did what no one believed was possible. He knocked out Michael Moorer to reclaim the heavyweight title. He wasn't just a champion again, he became the oldest heavyweight champion in history, proving to the world that no dream has an expiration date. But Foreman wasn't done changing the world. He reinvented himself yet again, this time as a businessman. The George Foreman grill became a household staple, selling over 100 million units worldwide. He went from knocking out opponents to knocking out fat, and America loved him for it. The world lost not just a champion, but an inspiration. George Foreman was a fighter, not just in the ring, but in life. From the streets to the Olympics, from defeat to redemption, from fighter to preacher, his journey was one of triumph over adversity. And though his gloves are now hung up for good, his legacy will never fade. It's not that I was the greatest, but that I fought for what I believed in. That's what makes a champion. Rest in peace, Big George. You were truly one of a kind.